the Freedom of Information Act. Well, yes, it's an act now. Been signed into law by the president, and as such, it's supposed to take and transform getting the Freedom of Information Act to work. That's what we're focusing on this morning. Remember that actually the members of the House, some of the members of the House of Representatives, they talked about that. There was a forum which they organized, and they expect a lot more people to take it up from there. But let's look at some of the issues they raised here, and we'll build on it.
For some Nigerians, it was one of the major achievements of the National Assembly. The Freedom of Information Act, before its enactment, went through years of waiting in the cooler. Indeed, it has scaled through tough hurdles.
How do we now take advantage of the laws to ensure that we have explanations from the government?
But 17 months since the act was enacted, the House of Representatives Committee on Reforms of Government Institutions holds these kind of sensitization workshops across the country. This very one in Lagos is for the southwest region.
It behoves on us to enlighten Nigerians that their freedom and their right to information is now in their own hands. Now more powered to be able to involve themselves in the governance of their own country.
I have questions as to how the nation's resources is being used. It's very critical. So some cases are in court, there's progress on this, and the sensitization by the committees to enlighten Nigerians on the need to use this bill and how to use it judiciously, effectively.
The FOI Act, which gives Nigerians the right to know, some people believe the use has not been optimized by Nigerians.
This is a law that we passed in the National Assembly to make it, to revolutionize our economy, to drive our economy forward and make it possible that corruption is reduced in our society, that we change the way we are doing things.
There is more awareness these days, and the people are learning that they can take advantage of it to ask questions. And I believe that more and more questions will be asked, because you can see people are now excited and interested in issues like, why do we have to pay for toll gate when we are traveling from international airport to local airport?
The goal of this forum is to raise awareness on the proper use of the FOI Act. And most of the speakers here believe the Act is capable of tackling corruption head-on and also ensuring accountability even at a higher stage of public office. Sheun Okinbaloye, reporting for Channels Television News.
Okay then, so there you have that. Dr. FOI Tam George joins us now. He's the Executive Director, Institute of Communication and Corporate Studies here in Lagos. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thanks for having me.
I was speaking about this Freedom of Information Act. Well, yes, perhaps we should have moved beyond, maybe we'll attempt to also, going beyond that perception that people have, that it's a journalist bill or act. No way. It's actually meant for people ask questions about governance. Now they see all sorts of things going on, but we joked about it yesterday that people tweet faster than they could even ask questions of government or what really is going on. But from your perception of this FOI Act and the need for people to actually get information, you think they're, number one, aware of this, let alone take advantage of this act?
Well, I think, first of all, what we need to remind ourselves of is the organizing principle of the act itself. And the central idea of that underpins the act is to make governance more transparent and accountable and empower citizens in such a manner that they will be able to hold public officials responsible and accountable to the people. So this is a very important piece of legislation. You could argue that this is perhaps the most important achievement of the present administration. But you see, the point about this is that even the best legislation is useless if it is not used. And so my suspicion is that a great deal of enlightenment campaign has got to be done, not just by the media, but even by civil society organizations. The media took ownership of the battle to get the act passed, but it seems that they just fell back after the law has been promulgated. I think that both the media and other sectors of society need to be more aware that they actually have a legislation that they can use to hold government officials more accountable and transparent in their activities.
Okay, but ever since it came up, the commencement date, May 28, 2011, there's been this debate as to whether or not it can be retroactive, because the information that people actually seek had already been in existence before this act was even, before the bill was, the act was passed. And so cases have been to court, some successes, some still facing challenges, but I'm not sure if that's where the drawback is. But do you see us, and how easy or difficult will it be to overcome this if the information people can get is only from May 28, 2011?
Well, legally speaking, the law becomes useful only at the time when it is passed. It was never intended that a law will have a retroactive effect. But, you know, I think that the more fundamental question, in fact, is whether Nigerians are aware of how much this legislation empowers them. My suspicion is that Nigerians are not aware. You know, if you have a law that compels public functionaries to be more transparent and accountable, and you don't use them, what we have to suppose is that you expect the government to be accountable to the people, and that the government will always act in good faith, will always act in a way that furthers the common interest all the time. If you have that kind of idea of government, I think it's a superstition, because anybody who knows how political or governmental practices play out in Nigeria knows that we know better than to allow politicians to hold themselves to account. Now there's a piece of legislation. The media has a responsibility as a watchdog of society to hold government to account. And I find it a bit paradoxical, because in our sitting rooms, we see all the time information beamed from war fronts in Syria, war fronts in Libya during the revolution in Tunisia, and all kinds of places. People, media practitioners basically put their lives on the line trying to get information to us around the world in our sitting rooms. Some of them die in the course of this. But we find in Nigeria is not at war, and it's a bit disappointing that media practitioners wait for government media releases to come to their offices. What does it take for them to investigate, to invoke or activate a piece of legislation that basically empowers them to demand information concerning governmental practices? And if the government does not provide those information to media practitioners or interested groups in civil society, they go to the court and test the law. Except we activate the law, even the best pieces of legislation will be of no effect at all. And I think that there's a reason for this lethargy that we notice in civil society. Over the past 3 decades, over nearly 30 years, we have had extensive dictatorships, military administrations. And so now that we have democracy over the past 10, 15 years, we seem to have minimalized our understanding of democracy. We seem to reduce democracy to simply voting every 4 years. Democracy is a much more expansive concept. We need to vote people, all right. We need to appoint people to run public affairs, all right. But then we also have a responsibility to hold those people that we elect to account. And here is a piece of legislation that empowers the citizenry to do so. And because we do not have the Enlightenment, people basically don't use the act. So I think that the National Orientation Agency needs to do a massive public enlightenment. People need to be aware that they have a piece of legislation that they can use. So this is a very fundamental citizenship empowerment legislation, and it's disappointing that civil society doesn't use it yet.